What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at patch 2.3 for Cyberpunk 2077, which just recently had this patch announced and then dropped yesterday from the time of this video. And while I have covered basically everything about Cyberpunk previously, I haven't talked about it since the end of 2023, as that is when it received the bulk of its final updates. However, this is apparently like the third final patch we've seen for this one, and the novelty of that is honestly a lot of why I wanted to check it out. But probably important to mention up front here that this is not a terribly large patch. It does feature a little bit of content in the form of like new vehicles, new side jobs associated with them, and a couple other things we'll get to, but it is not a gigantic patch by any means. But given how long it's been since this game actually released, I think it's kind of wild it's still getting any patches at all at this point. Though seeing how there have been rumors about The Witcher 3 getting another DLC to prep people for The Witcher 4, I guess it's not all that surprising at the end of the day. Now, what probably got the most attention for this patch was actually cars, just all around. So straight away there are those 4 new ones. These are all pretty much associated with a side job to unlock it, and then sometimes there's an extra one to unlock the new paint jobs for it, which we'll get to momentarily. But in terms of like new missions and actual new content to experience, it all pretty much revolves around these cars. Now, what is also interesting about that, though, is that they included self-driving for cars via auto drive, as it's called, which will, of course, automatically drive you to your destination without you actually having to control the vehicle. Now, I will say both this and the Delamain cabs, which are essentially just a cab service, have a little trouble with navigation, so it's not exactly a perfect system. For Delamain's cabs, after you complete that side quest involving Delamain, you'll be able to actually just call one of his cabs and take a ride somewhere, or just have it drive you around town. But in both instances, I did find, again, the navigation to be a little spotty. Either the car sits in place for way too long, it runs into things, occasionally it'll even get stuck, which in some cases is probably on par for what you might expect from Night City overall, but still not done with the vehicles yet, though, because then there is Rayfield's Crystal Coat, which has been made available for the bulk of vehicles, certain vehicles like story-related stuff, and then vehicles with special paint jobs this will not be available for, but most of the vehicles you can acquire have the Crystal Coat option available, which effectively just lets you change their color on the fly, even from a bunch of presets you can customize and set up to your heart's content. You just pull up a menu, it lets you change and adjust all sorts of various elements of the car's paint job. You can even change things like the headlights as an example, and this will, of course, immediately swap out the look of the thing. The cars that have this available will have a little spray can icon on their tab when you call them to come get you, so it should be pretty apparent which ones can and cannot make use of this. Probably worth a mention, though, that if you drive crazy and get the car damaged, this will stop working, which is by design. Now, a lot of cars will have this available by default, and then there are some vehicles, some of the new ones, in fact, that actually have the Crystal Coat unlocked by doing another side job, as an example. In addition to just cars, there is some other changes as well, though. They made some additions to photo mode. In particular, there are apparently 27 new NPCs that can be spawned via the photo mode to, of course, take a photo with. You can swap out outfits for all of them. You can swap out between your own wardrobe outfits for yourself. And they also made changes to things like lighting, stickers, frames, even adding a new time and weather tab, which of course lets you change the time of day and weather of the individual photo shot you happen to be taking. So some interesting things all around. Now, the rest of what this patch includes is mostly a variety of small general fixes, like cleaning up some lingering issues such as floating textures, textures not loading in properly, that kind of thing. A fix for one of the mini games in-game, even as an example, so just a variety of tiny stuff. Now, probably much more interestingly, though, is actually the PC-specific stuff, such as adding support for FSR's Super Resolution 4, as well as the Frame Generation 3.1 for the same thing, and apparently that is being added as support for a driver that is releasing for AMD GPUs in the future, but is not currently available, and you should see the option once that driver is installed and everything, but that's actually not all, because they also added support for the Intel frame generation technology as well, on top of fixing a few things with DLSS. So just some general support updates for things like the various forms of frame generation. I did also want to mention here that they increased the maximum save file size from 12 megabytes to 15 megabytes, which stuck out to me as an interesting change at the very least, but that is just about everything the patch itself covers. I did also want to mention, though, that with patch 2.3, they also dropped the Ultimate Edition for Mac users, and in fact, if you've already got the game via things like Steam or Epic or whatever, with this update, it should play on those particular machines without an issue, so that's certainly something to know. Pulling all of that together, though, mostly I would just say this was an interesting patch overall. Some decent updates in there for people. I know people were looking for car customization all the way back when the game initially launched, but it's probably worth a mention that all of these, literally years later now, that when you're updating a game that hasn't seen updates in a long time, it's inevitably going to break a bunch of people's mods and you're going to get some pushback on that. And then there's the fact that this isn't a terribly gigantic patch or anything. It just mostly adds some quality of life features, things like that. But overall, I'm still happy to see it, because while the scope of it is relatively reined in, I do think there's a lot of good changes in there, a lot of fun ways to interact with various bits of the world, and with any luck it'll make people's experience for the excellent Phantom Liberty DLC in the future that much more enjoyable. But that's pretty much everything there is to know about this one as of right now. Again, just mostly wanted to cover this because of the novelty of the update after so long, but I do certainly hope you enjoyed the video nonetheless. Do let me know how you feel about it down in the comment section below, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.